Board, we now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderwoman Flowers, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderwoman Young, Alderman Conway, Alderman Ortman, Alderman Vollmer, Alderman Villa, Alderman Arnowitz, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Florida, Alderwoman Behringer, Alderman Roddy, Alderman Kennedy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderman Schmid, Alderman French, Alderman Boyd, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Ogilvie, Alderman Cone, Alderman Williamson, Alderman Carter, Alderwoman Cruzen, President Reed,
Here.
Alderwoman Flowers, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderman Conway, Alderman Vollmer, Alderman Arnowitz, Alderman Roddy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderman French, 23 present. 24 present.
A quorum being present, I'll ask everyone in the chambers who's able to stand to please rise for prayer. Giving all honor to God, Almighty God, source of all authority, we humbly ask guidance in our deliberations and wisdom in our conclusions. Amen. We will dispense with line item 3, introduction of honored guests. Any introductions of honored guests? Alderman for the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have for my honored guest today Ronnie Auer, as usual, and Officer Joe Steiger, who's the president of the Police Officers Association.
Well, welcome, Ronnie. Alderwoman from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I would like to have as my honored guests this morning Todd Hake and Jeff Hunts from the Carpenters, David Holmes from the Plumbers and Pipefitters, Anthony Lancia from AGC, and Gina Hackenworth from Euclid. Thank you.
All right. Alderman from the 3rd.
Mr. President, members of the board, I'd like to have my special guest this morning, Brian Williams from Congressman Clay's office.
Alderman from the 26th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have as my special guest today, Ms. Stephanie Robinson of Ameren UE. Thank you.
Alderwoman from the 1st. Alderwoman from the 1st, did you have a? Okay, all right. I didn't want to skip you. Coming back. Alderman.
Hello.
Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. I'd like to have as my special guest Mr. Charles Kirkwood of Kirkwood Cleaners and Mr. Leroy Grant of the Ameren UE, the AT&T family. Sorry about that, Leroy.
All right, thank you. Alderwoman from the 14th.
I would like to have as my special guest today Senator Harry Kennedy, committeeman from the 14th Ward, and also representing Sharon Carpenter, Recorder of Deeds Office.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 22nd.
Good morning, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have Mr. Chris Pickle with AT&T as my special guest this morning.
All right, thank you. Any further introductions? Alderwoman from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, I'd like to have as my special guest this morning Rhonda Smythe with TrailNet.
Okay. Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that my very special guest today is Mr. Maurice Falls from your office.
Maurice. Alderman from the 22nd.
couple more special guests. I'd like to have Ron Auer and Joe Steiger with the St. Louis Police Officers Association as my special guests this morning.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for coming down, Joe. Any further? Alderman from the 27th?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have as my special honored guests Mr. A. Pruitt and Percy Green III from Fire.
Oh, yeah. Welcome, guys. Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Alderman from the 7th, you recognize on approval of the minutes.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move for the approval of the minutes of the June 6th meeting.
Moved by the Alderman from the 7th, seconded by the Alderman from the 20th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Report of city officials.
Report of city officials can be found in sections A, B, and C of the agenda and have been placed in all aldermen's mailboxes. I have from His Honor the Mayor the following correspondence. Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for appointment to the Affordable Housing Commission. The appointment of Danita James, who resides in the 5th Ward and whose term will expire on June the 30th, 2017. The appointment of Stephen Folch, a resident of the 7th Ward and whose term will expire on June the 30th, 2017. I respectfully request your approval of these appointments. Sincerely, Francis G. Slay, Mayor, City of St. Louis.
Alderman from the 7th, you recognize the mayor's appointment to the Affordable Housing Commission.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I move for approval of the appointments of these people to the Affordable Housing Corporation.
Moved by the Alderman from the 7th, seconded by the Alderman from the 25th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for appointment to the Civil Rights Enforcement Agency. The appointment of David Noble, a resident of the 28th Ward and whose term will expire on November the 21st, 2017. The appointment of Sal Martinez, resident of the 7th Ward and whose term will expire on November the 21st, 2017. The appointment of Charles Brown, Jr., a resident of the 26th Ward whose term will expire November the 21st, 2017. The appointment of Kay Gasson Haas, a resident of the 13th Ward and whose term will expire on November 21st, 2017. The appointment of David Newberger, a resident of the 17th Ward and whose term will expire on November 21st, 2017. I respectfully request your approval of these appointments. Sincerely, Francis G. Slay, Mayor, City of St. Louis.
Alderman from the 16th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the Civil Rights Enforcement Agency.
I move that we approve the said individuals for the Career Commission.
Moved by the Alderman from the 16th, seconded by the Alderman from the 25th. Any discussion? Alderman from the 1st.
Mr. President, members of the board, I rise to ask for a roll call. I'm not necessarily opposed to individuals. What I am opposed to is when you look at the makeup of the civil rights enforcement, and it's not race, it's a region and area for me. There is no one that is hardly over Delmar. When you get to North St. Louis, there's no one represented at all, and I think that there should have been a more representative, some people that live north of Page, that we got a vast community there that should be represented on something that's so important. So I'm not voting against any individual, but I am voting against not being represented on the civil rights enforcement. I do wish to have a roll call.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 16th, you recognize close.
I renew my motion.
It's been moved and seconded that we appoint the Civil Rights Enforcement Agency of the aforementioned members. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderwoman Young. Alderman Conway. Alderman Ortman. Alderman Vollmer. Alderman Villa. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Florida. Alderwoman Behringer. Alderman Roddy. Alderman Kennedy? Alderwoman Davis?
No.
Alderman Schmidt? Alderman Fridge? Alderman Boyd? Alderman Vaccaro? Alderman Ogilvie? Alderman Cone? Alderman Williamson? Alderman Carter? Alderwoman Cruzen? President Reed?
No.
Alderman Ortman? Alderman Vollmer? Alderman Arnowitz? Alderman Roddy? Alderman Boyd? 20 aye votes, 6 no votes.
By a vote, you stay in the motion. Alderman from the 16th and appointed the aforementioned people to the Civil Rights Enforcement Agency.
That's the extent of report of city officials.
We will dispense with line items 7 through 10. First reading of board bills.
Board Bill 89, sponsored by Alderman Williamson, an ordinance directing the Director of Streets to close, barricade, or otherwise impede the flow of traffic on Maple, at the east curb line of Clarendon Avenue, and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill number 90, sponsored by Alderwoman Young, an ordinance authorizing and directing the street commissioner to take all necessary actions to honorarily designate 7th Street as Shannan's Way. Board Bill 91, sponsored by Alderman Roddy, an ordinance approving the release and termination of a reversionary interest in certain property known as 4250 Rear Duncan, 4240 Rear Duncan, and 315 South Sarah, authorizing the execution of a quitclaim deed for said property and containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. Board Bill 92, sponsored by Alderman Roddy, an ordinance approving the petition of various owners of certain real property to establish the Euclid South Community Improvement District and containing an emergency clause and a severability clause. That's the extent of our first readings.
Reference to committee.
To the Streets Committee, Board Bills 89 and 90, to the Housing Committee, Board Bill 91, and to the Ways and Means Committee, Board Bill 92. That's the extent of reference to committee.
Second reading.
The following board bill was reported out of the Housing Committee, Board Bill number 81, sponsored by Alderwoman Young, Alderman Williamson, and Alderwoman Ingracia, an ordinance affirming approval of ordinance numbers 69609, 69610, 69612, 69614, and 69615, and that the affected taxing jurisdictions have been properly notified of a public hearing regarding said ordinances. The following board bill was reported out of the Ways and Means Committee. Board Bill 1, Committee Substitute, sponsored by President Reed and Alderman Kennedy, the budget for 2014 through 2015 fiscal year, appropriated in the aggregate to the sum of $1,004,132,109, which sum is hereby appropriated from the revenue and special funds named for purposes hereinafter enumerated and containing an emergency clause. Following board bills was reported out of Transportation and Commerce Committee. Board Bill 83, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commissioner, Board of Public Service, and the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing the Public Work Improvement Program herein entitled Building and Environment Projects Security Access System Upgrades at Lambert Airport and containing a severability and an emergency clause. Board Bill 84, sponsored by Alderman Conway, and an ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commission and the Board of Estimate and Apportionment that provides for financial incentives for air service at Lambert Airport, determines and finds that it is in the best interest of the city, the airport, and the traveling public to encourage service at the airport by new passenger and cargo airlines and to stimulate service by airlines currently using the the airport by the adoption of programs providing for financial incentives for new airlines or new air service at the airport containing a severability clause and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 85, sponsored by Alderman Conway, and ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commission, the Board of Investment and Apportionment, making certain findings with respect to the transfer of $2,200,000 of excess monies that the city intends to transfer from the Airport Development Fund into the Airport Contingency Fund. Further authorizing transfers of funds in amount not to exceed $3,204,354 from the Airport Contingency Fund to the Airport Revenue Fund, and containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. Following board bills were reported out of the Streets Committee. Board Bill 62, sponsored by Alderman Bosley, and ordinance recommended by the Parking Commission, making appropriation for payment of the operating expenses, capital equipment, and improvement expenses, including lease purchase agreements involving the Parking Division, asset debt service expenses of the Parking Division of the Treasurer's Office for a fiscal year beginning July the 1st, 2014, and ending June the 30th, 2015, amounting in the aggregate to the sum of $14,738,900 and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 65, sponsored by Alderman Kennedy, and ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission, approving the name of a new public street to be located adjacent to the approved North Sarah Phase 2 re-subdivision located in City Block 4564. Board Bill 67, sponsored by Alderman Moore, and ordinance establishing a stop site for all northbound and southbound traffic traveling on Newstead at Colt Brilliant and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 68, sponsored by Alderman Williamson, and ordinance directing the Director of Streets to temporarily close, barricade, or otherwise impede the flow of traffic on Ridge from the northeast corner to the southeast corner of 5364 Ridge and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 69, sponsored by Alderman Arnowitz, and ordinance establishing a four-way stop site at the intersection of Tesson and Schroeder Court by regulating all northbound and southbound traffic traveling on Tesson at Schroeder Court and regulating all eastbound and westbound traffic traveling on Schroeder Court at Tesson and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 86, sponsored by Alderman Roddy, and ordinance pertaining to parking within the 4200 block of Gibson Residential Park District, authorizing the traffic administrator to designate the location and restrictions for curb parking of residential parking zones within the 4200 Gibson Avenue Residential Park District and containing definitions, a penalty clause, and an emergency clause. Board Bill 87, sponsored by Alderman Bosley, and ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service to conditionally vacate travel on Pleasant Street from Carter northwardly to a point adjacent to City Block 1404 and 1406 in the city. That's the extent of our second readings.
Dispense with line item 14, perfection consent.
Board Bill 59, sponsored by Alderman Kennedy, and ordinance pertaining to transit sales tax, creating the City Public Transit Sales Tax Trust Fund, directing the treasurer to deposit funds received pursuant to said sales tax into the City Public Transit Sales Tax Trust Fund, account 1, appropriating $10,074,162, providing for the payment of such funds during the period of July the 1st, 2014 through June the 30th, 2015, and containing a severability clause. Board Bill number 60, sponsored by Alderman Kennedy, and ordinance pertaining to the transit sales tax approved by the voters, creating the City Public Transit Sales Tax Trust Fund, directing the treasurer to deposit funds received pursuant to sales tax into the City Public Transit Sales Tax Trust Fund, account 2, appropriating $10,074,162 and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 61, sponsored by Alderman Kennedy, and ordinance appropriating the sum of $20,153,420, which sum is hereby appropriated out of the Transportation Trust Fund to the Bi-State Development Agency for transportation purposes and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 64, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingracia, and ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor and the comptroller to execute a quitclaim deed to AGC of St. Louis Education Foundation for city-owned property located in City Block 480, which property is known as 1230 Grattan, upon receipt of and in consideration the sum of $150,000 containing an emergency clause. That's the extent of perfection consent.
Alderman from the 17th, you're recognized on the motion for the perfection consent calendar.
Yes, Mr. President, I move that we approve the perfection consent calendar.
Moved by Alderman from the 17th, seconded by the Alderman from the 3rd. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We'll dispense with line items 16 through 19. I move for adoption of our courtesy resolution calendar. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 26th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. First reading of resolutions.
Resolution 83, sponsored by Alderwoman Cruzen, the Board of Aldermen pursuant to Ordinance 64994, the Parks and Environmental Matters Committee does hereby approve the recommendations of the Director for the appropriation of Neighborhood Parks Capital Improvements Account funds for fiscal year 2014.
Alderwoman from the 28th, you're recognized on the first reading of resolution number 83.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I would request that this resolution be sent to the Parks Committee, please.
Okay, it's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 28th. I entertain a second on the motion, seconded by the Alderman from the 9th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Madam Clerk, please assign resolution number 83 to the Parks Committee.
So noted. That's the extent of first reading of resolutions.
We dispense with line item 22, miscellaneous unfinished business.
We have none.
Announcements.
Monday, June the 23rd, a Legislation Committee meeting at 3:30 p.m. 3:30 p.m. in the Leisure Room. Tuesday, Ways and Means Committee meeting, 9 a.m. in the Kennedy Room. Wednesday, Housing meeting at 8:30 a.m. in the Kennedy Room. On Thursday, Neighborhood Development meeting, 2 p.m. in the Kennedy Room. Friday, Parks Committee meeting, 9 a.m. in the Leisure Room. Also on Friday, full board meeting, 10 a.m. in the Chambers. That's the extent of my announcement.
Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from the 24th.
I just wanted to take a second to say hello to my neighbor and new friend, Julie Colombo, who I have to admit is a much better gardener than I am, although at 92 years old, she's had a lot more experience. So, hi, Julie.
Yeah, let's give Julie a round of applause. Alderman from the 26th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. This Sunday, there will be free concerts at Ivan Perry Park, which is located on Cabaney and Belt. The concert hours will be between 6 and 8, so come out and enjoy the free concerts at the Ivan Perry Park, formerly Visitation Park, from 6 to 8. That is Sunday the 22nd. Also, Thursday the 26th, we'll be having our monthly ward meetings at Union Memorial Church, so we encourage all our constituents to come out to attend the monthly ward meetings. They'll be located at Union Memorial Church. That's located at Belt in Barmer, and that starts at 6:30. So that's Thursday the 26th, 6:30, Union Memorial Church, 26th Ward, monthly meeting. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 16th.
President and members of the board, this Saturday in Francis Park will be the third or fourth at this point concert called Grub and Groove. That's put on by the Young St. Louis Hills Ambassadors. There's over 3,000 people that attended last year, and the band is well-liked. They're called the Well Hungarians, and all the money raised at this event goes back into Francis Park. Thank you.
All right. We also have our Parks Director here. Let's give him a round of applause. Gary Best, thank you for coming out, joining us today. As usual, Gary is very dapper. Alderwoman from the 19th.
Board. First, I'd like to commend the Metropolitan Village Senior Living Building and the residents there for reviving the first and oldest garden in the city of St. Louis yesterday. We had a nice gathering there. The crops looked good, and it was just wonderful to see them out participating. I'd also like to acknowledge the Federation of Block Units will have their annual event next Saturday at the O'Fallon Park Recreation Center from 8:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. And they'll have lots of information for people who are interested in energy conservation and a number of other things. And of course, I'm going to wish well to the Urban League and their Salute to Women event tonight at the Renaissance Hotel. They will be honoring 16 women from the region, and the Lifetime Achievement honoree will be Anna Marie Horsford, and I'm looking forward to them having a great event tonight. It is totally sold out at the Grand Ballroom. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderwoman from the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I would just like to announce that Rebuilding Together is coming to the 5th Ward, and if anyone needs any applications for a home repair, please contact me. And also, they have acquired additional funding for veterans throughout the entire city, so if anyone knows of any veterans who would be in need of any home repair or anything like that, please contact them. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 22nd.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. The 22nd Ward will have its regularly monthly meeting on Tuesday from 5:30 to 7:30. That's not correct. From 6 o'clock to 7:30 at the Omega Center, 3900 Goodfellow. So again, that's next Tuesday from 6 o'clock to 7:30, 3900 Goodfellow at the Omega Center. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alderman. Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from the 17th, you recognize on the motion to excuse.
Yes, Mr. President, I move that we excuse the alder people from the 10th and 12th wards.
Moved by the Alderman from the 17th, seconded by the Alderman from the 25th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Alderman from the 17th, you're recognized on the motion to adjourn.
Mr. President, I move that we adjourn till next Friday, June 27th.
Moved by the Alderman from the 17th, seconded by the Alderman from the 11th. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, stand adjourned.